Hi everybody, Michael here. So this video is about something that a lot of people ask me when they receive their first payslips. It's about explaining what the payslip is about. So I'm just taking here an example, a real example, a recent example of a payslip generated by SDWorks, which is a Belgian payroll provider, one of the best actually. And I took out all the personal information about the employer and the employee, so to make it general and also for confidentiality reason, of course. So the part in red, the top left corner, for example, it used to be the reference of the employer. Yeah? And below the confidential notice, it's the name of the employee. Yeah? On the right, you have the period for which this payslip has been issued, so July 2023, so it's all written here. The date it was issued, the 22nd of June 2023. You will notice that it's not the last day of the month, so if there is any correction to be made, for example, if somebody goes on unexpected sick leave between the 22nd and the end of the month, this will be corrected next month in July. So in July you would have a corrected payslip for June and then the one for July. NISS is the national identification number, the personal one, so the one of each resident in Belgium. So I also, for obvious reason, took out the number, but if you look at your payslip, you will find your national number. And this number is used for plenty of different things in Belgium, so it's a good thing to know. It's also on the back of your identity card. You also have other personal information here. Your marital status, so in this case this person is single, which will have an impact on their withholding tax and their income tax. And also whether or not they have children, for example. So here this person is not in charge of anyone else, so doesn't have any children to take care of. Also something that is very important for the calculation of the income tax, but we will come back to that later. You have the reference number of the employee within the organization, so 23, and what it means is that this person is the 23rd hired in this organization. So they start with 01, 02, 03, and so on, until the end of the organization. You also have the employment status of the person. So this person is an employee. There are obviously different options here. Employee, it can be a blue collar, it can be a civil servant, it can be a self-employed. So here we are talking about an employee. Next. Now we are getting to the main part of the presentation. So at the top here you can see 2,922.56. This is the theoretical monthly gross salary. Why am I talking about theoretical and not the actual monthly gross salary? Is because if you are in a situation where during the month you take unpaid leave, so leave for which you are not paid, the actual gross salary will not be the same than the theoretical one, or the one that is on your employment contract, right? Because the days you are not paid, of course, is deducted of your gross salary. So here you can see in yellow the real monthly gross salary, and it's exactly the same than the theoretical one. Yeah. So here we are not dealing with unpaid leave. And actually, if you look just above the yellow monthly gross salary, you will see there that we have reported 18 days worked and 4 days of holidays or days off. So you have it per month, per days, and you also have it per hours. So here you can actually calculate that the person is supposed to work 7.6 hours per day, or 38 hours per week, which is kind of standard in Belgium. Yeah, it's always between 35 and 40. So 38 is standard. And you have in the amount column, you actually have the amount reflected. Okay, so out of the 2,922.56 monthly gross salary, how much of this is actually covering days that I've actually worked, and how much of this is actually covering days that I'm actually paid to be on days off. Yeah, it's paid days off. So that's the first quite useful information to analyze. Then the second part is in between the gross salary and the taxable salary. So here the first thing to think about is the fact that you have to pay social security contribution on your gross salary, okay, as an employee. It goes through the employer, but this is something that is taken out of your gross salary. So here you can see 381.98. This is the normal social security contribution, and it represents 13.07% of your gross salary. And this percentage is everybody as an employee get taken out 13.07%. So it's not linked with the level of salary that you get or anything like this. Everyone, except if you have a very, very low salary, would be the percentage would be the same for everyone. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then the line just below for 37.08, you will notice that it's not a negative, it's a positive, and it's called a bonus de travail or bonus à l'emploi, which is the most common term that we use in Belgium. So this bonus is basically has been created to avoid situation where, as a jobless person, and if you were to get unemployment benefit, you would actually earn more than if you were an employee. So to avoid that situation, and having a system that is always makes it that everybody is always better off being an employee than being on unemployment benefit, they have created this bonus system. So it's actually a deduction on the deduction. So it's a deduction on the social security contribution. So that's why it's in positive and not in negative. Yeah. It's usually quite a small number, and the more your gross, the more you are paid, basically, the less likely this amount is going to be high. Because the more you are paid and the more different, the more you will get a difference between your level of salary and if you were a jobless on unemployment benefit. Sorry. So, all right. So we start with the gross. We deduct the employees' normal social security contribution, you add the bonus that we just discussed, and you get to the taxable amount. So this is the amount from which the tax the income tax will be applied. So the next line is actually the tax. It's called a withholding tax, in the sense that actually they take from your payslip an advance on the income tax that you will have to do in a year or so, because the Belgian government doesn't want to wait to get the money at the end when you have to do your income tax. They basically take an advance every month. That's why it's called the withholding tax. So this tax, the income tax, is progressive, meaning the higher your salary is, the higher the percentage of the tax will be. Okay? And there are a lot of things that needs to be taken in consideration when it comes to income tax. So it's not like social security contribution, where it's a percentage and it's for everyone and it's the same percentage, whether or not you are paid 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So a few variables in terms of calculating what the withholding tax should be and what your income tax at the end of the year should be is, of course, first and foremost, your level of gross salary. The higher your gross salary, the more you will have to pay in income tax. And as I said, this is progressive, so the higher your gross salary, the income tax thresholds, you reach the higher thresholds, yeah? And it can go to 50%, so it can go very high. The other consideration is, for example, are you single or are you living with somebody else? If you are living with somebody else and you actually tell the person in charge of payroll in your organization, so it's not a de facto situation, it's something that you need to tell the person in charge of payroll so that they can update your marital situation in this case. So in this case, the person, you remember at the top, is a single. So if I go up, you can see here célibataire in French, single in English. So this person, compared to somebody that is married, will have to pay more income tax. It's how it is, because the system of income tax is that if you're married with somebody, for example, you will have one declaration to make, one return to do at the end of the year. And it usually means that with two people, and if you have kids, it's even worse. The level of income tax you will be paying will be less for the same level of income. All right. So it's very important that you tell your payroll advisor or the person dealing with your payroll in your organization every time you decide to get married. Well, when I mean every time, I'm hoping you are not getting married a lot, but if you get married, also if you go and live together with somebody else and it has legal repercussion, cohabitant, for example, as we say in French. So if you are legally living together under the same roof, if you start having kids, from the moment you have the first kid, the second kid, the third kid, you have to tell. You have to tell, because it will reduce the level of income tax and therefore the level of withholding tax that will be applied to your situation. Also, another thing that has quite a lot of impact on the income tax is where you live. So if you live in Brussels, or if you live in Flanders, or if you live in Wallonia, you also have to say if you are changing region, or in any way, you have to say when you are changing addresses anyway. But changing region will have an impact on how much income tax you will be paying and how much withholding tax will be applied on your gross salary. So here in this situation, we have withholding tax of 482.55. Okay, so this is automatically calculated, so you don't have to do anything about this. This is how it is. You can see that there is also a bonus on the fiscal aspect. So we already discussed the bonus on the social aspect, social security contribution. You have the same reasoning for the income tax. The system should always favor you working than you not working. It doesn't make that much of a difference. You see, it's 12.29, but it's there, and it's really there to make sure that you are not worse off by working compared to not working. Next line is the bike benefit. So if you are going to the office, you can go to the office by several means. In this case, this person is using a bike, so she's getting per kilometer. So it's a question of number of kilometers between home and work, and it's also a question of how many days a week this person is going to the office. Because if she's working from home, she's not getting the bike benefit. The bike benefit is really a representation of how many kilometers a week or a month, for this case, you are biking. This up to a certain threshold. So you can see here in French, sans ONSS ni précompte. That means that what she's getting is probably the maximum to the threshold over which you would be subject to social security contribution and withholding tax. So, I mean, 65.12 is quite nice, knowing that this person is actually not working full-time to the office. So I think it's a representation of the fact that she's not working very, very close to where she lives. So 65.12 euros per month is quite nice, and it's not taxable, so that's really nice as well. The next is, in French it says remboursement de frais forfaitaires propres à l'employeur, and she's getting 168 euros, non-taxable as well, a month for this. So what is this? So that's a situation where the employee has to pay cost that is directly related to the work this person is doing. So a good example of this is a situation where you have to work from home, and because you are working from home, the employer is supposed to cover for the cost of you working from home. So if you are, let's say you are working from home 2 days a week, for those 2 days, the heating, the electricity, the water, you can even think about the cleaning products. If you have to pay for the internet at your home, you probably have to call once in a while for the office as well. All of this is represented by this 168 euros a month. So this is the employer covering costs that you had to incur because you were working from home, for example. You have to be careful with this because it has to be, the amount needs to be quite, you have to be able to prove that this is more or less the amount of money you're spending. If you have this, for example, on your payslip, and you are like, oh, this is really low, I should get more because I'm really spending more while working at home compared to the office. If you can justify the amount, if you can prove by invoices, for example, showing, this is how much I was paying for example, electricity before I decided to work from home, and now what I'm spending, and this is the difference. And if you can do this on several levels, so telephone, internet, office furniture, cleaning products, anything really, and you get to a number that is higher than the number you are getting from your employer, then by any means go back to your employer and say, this is not enough, you need to increase it. But you can back it up with invoices. You can prove, if there is an inspection, that this amount is not a way to try to give you more money than you deserved. This has to be a direct reflection of how much you are spending. Okay? So be careful with the amount. This is the conclusion of this. The next line is cotisation spéciale de sécurité sociale. So we already discussed the normal social security contribution. There is also a special security contribution. And one of the aspects of this special social security contribution is the amount. Of course, it's a lot less than the normal contribution. And a second aspect to this is you remember that the bonus is decreasing with the level of staff cost, with the level of gross salary you get. The special social security contribution is the other way around. The higher your gross salary is, and the more you will have to pay in terms of special security contribution, special social security contribution. Sorry, because it's not actually a fixed percentage as we had for the normal contribution. This special contribution behaves a bit more like the income tax. So really, if you have a really high salary, it's gonna go not crescendo, but really it's proportional. So you will really have to pay a lot more. It's not a fixed percentage. Yeah. And there is also a maximum and a minimum, so it's quite a difficult calculation to be made. Just for you to know, the higher your salary, the more you will have to contribute. Then the next one is about meal vouchers. There will be a separate video on how the whole meal vouchers is working in Belgium, because it's also a question that comes back a lot with the expats, because they are not used to the meal voucher concept in their own country, because it's very peculiar to Belgium, I think. There are two ways to contribute to a meal voucher. I'm talking about who is paying for those meal vouchers. There is always a personal contribution, and when we mean personal, is employees' contribution to the meal voucher, and this is what we are talking about here. So for each meal voucher, and you get one meal voucher by working day, 1.09 euros will have to be contributed by you via your salary and your payslip. Yeah. So here you can see that the personal contribution to your meal vouchers is 19.62, which is 1.09 multiplied by 18, and 18 being the number of days you have worked during the month. Yeah? So this is deducted from your salary because it's your own contribution to your meal vouchers. So, just to sum this up, you start with your gross salary. That is actually a reflection of the number of days you are being paid for. So, it doesn't take into account unpaid days or unpaid leave. You get out of your gross salary, an amount is taken out as social security contribution, normal ones. This social security contribution is reduced by a bonus that makes sure that you are getting a higher salary than if you are not, if you were on unemployment benefit. Yeah. Out of this calculation, you get the taxable amount from the taxable amount, the withholding tax is deducted, and this deduction is reduced by another bonus. Yeah. On the top of your net, or on the top of that amount, you get the bike benefit if you're using a bike, of course. If you're not using a bike, there are other benefits. Yeah. So that's the 65 euros. And then on the top of that, you get 168 non-taxable as to compensate for the extra cost of working from home, for example, or having a lot of representation cost. You have to go and meet people at a cafe very often, for example, and you don't want to claim every time 3 or 4 euros every time you have a representation cost. So this gets into this fixed amount that you get every month to cover those kind of miscellaneous costs. Yeah. Out of this gets deducted the special social security contribution that we discussed and your personal contribution to your meal vouchers, and you get to the net salary. And very often the net salary is the same than the net to pay. So the net to pay, if you go down a bit, is in this case it's the same. Yeah, the net 2,302.51, and what the person is getting is 2,302.51. So it's exactly the same. So we start with a gross salary of 2,922.56, and this person is getting out of that 2,302.51. So actually the difference between the two is 620. That would be in this case the difference between the net and the gross. Of course, the higher your salary, the more the difference will be, because of the progressive aspect of some of those taxes as we discussed. Now if you go to the second page, this is more for information. It doesn't really impact your net salary. But you can see here the employer's contribution to your meal vouchers. So as I said, your personal contribution is 1.09, and depending on the facial value of the meal voucher, it can go up to 8 euros. So in this case, it's actually 8 euros. So if the facial value is 8 euros and you are contributing 1.09 euros, the employer contribution would be 6.91, and if you multiply 6.91 by 18 days worked, you will get to 124.38, which is what we have here. So if I do 6.91 multiplied by 18, you see it's the same amount. Number of meal vouchers 18, but we already discussed that you can only get a meal voucher if you have actually worked. And here is just a recap of the number of days this person has worked and the number of days this person has taken days off. And that's it. The last thing I want to stress, because it's not always obvious for people that are not really used to all of this, the cost for your employer of hiring you and getting you to work, what we call the staff cost, is a lot higher than the gross salary. Yeah? But this part of the calculation, which is the employer side, you don't see it on Payslip. This is another document that employees never see, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Yeah. So be careful when you are like trying to figure out how much you cost based on gross salary, because it's not that obvious. There is a big gap, especially in Belgium, between what what is on your employment contract and on your pay slips, compared to actually how much you actually cost to the organization and how much we need to budget for your staff cost. So this is really something that you have to keep in mind when thinking about all of this. If you have any questions, please comment on this video and we will try to either come back to you. Obviously a lot of this can be quite sensitive because we are talking about your salary. So we are happy to answer your question via email as well. But if you comment, of course, and you mention the stuff that maybe you didn't understand or something that we didn't speak about, you might have benefits on your payslip that is actually not on this specific payslip. So there might be other benefits that we can speak another time on. So yeah, don't hesitate to comment if you have any questions. All right, thanks a lot, and see you on the next video.